kind of a big problem with identifying suicide as just the moment. If we're only focusing on it as a personal tragedy and not as a public health challenge, then we're missing the boat completely. That's where Suicide Prevention Month really comes into play. This has to be more this month than just saying, hey, you, person that's feeling down, person that doesn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, person that is looking forward to the day where you don't wake up anymore. You can do it. You can get through this. I believe in you. We're stopping
Yeah.
well short, Victor. It needs to be, we can get through this. What's going on? What's getting you down? How can I help, solve what's going on with you?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tell Me Mas podcast. Thank you so much for all of your recent feedback on our latest episode, for all the likes and the subscribes. I can't tell you how important that is for the channel and how helpful it is. Today, we are going to talk about a topic that is a little heavy, and I'll be honest, probably the conversation I've been kind of most nervous about. And I think that's exactly why I want to discuss it, because this month September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And to discuss suicide prevention is Chad Moses, Director of Outreach and Experience at an organization called To Write Love on Her Arms, or TWLOHA. Did I pronounce TWLOHA?
Crushed it. Yeah,
TWLOHA.
great job.
Okay. Great, Chad. Thank you so much, for the work that you and your organization does, and for spending time with me today to talk about this.
Right on, Victor. Yeah, thanks for tracking us down. It's kind of like what you're mentioning. It's not rare to feel hesitant, or maybe even nervous to discuss issues of mental health and suicide prevention. But what we found time and again is that it is so important to have these conversations. In fact, it's way more important that you do have the conversations, even if you don't feel like you're totally equipped, even if you don't feel like you have all the right words. It's better that you talk about it than how you talk about it.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So before we dig into it, like, how long have you been with the organization, and can you tell me a little bit about the mission and sort of the story? I mean, the name is just fascinating. I'd love to hear that as well.
Yeah. Way to ask a simple question that's going to have a pretty long, pretty long answer. So
Hey, we've
we
got the time, man.
I love it. I love it. So, To Write Love on Our Arms is the name of the organization. You can learn more about us just by going to our acronym, TWLOHA.com. And we admit it's a funny name. But what we're a nonprofit that exists to present hope and find help for anyone struggling with mental health challenges, stuff like depression, addiction, self-injury, and suicide. And the name of the game for us is really to build a better bridge to connect people looking for help to local and affordable options for that help. So the name is a little bit long and awkward for an organization because, well, this all kind of started by accident. When this began 18 years ago, there was no business plan in place. There was no idea that podcasts, no idea that music, no idea that t-shirts and merchandise, no idea that Suicide Prevention Month would be a piece of this. But when it began, it was really just focused on helping a friend and telling her story. So the name To Write Love on Our Arms is the name of a literal story. We're not trying to imply that one gender struggles more than any other with mental health challenges, but originally this was focused on a real life her. Her name is Renee, and 18 years ago, Renee's story was one of cocaine addiction and self-injury amongst, a backdrop of a number of other mental health challenges. But when she came to a point in her own story, in her own journey, that she was ready to find help. And before she went to seek that help, she asked her friends if she could just have one last night with her vices. That night she had one last, kind of binge with cocaine, and then she locked herself in the bathroom. And that night she took a razor and she wrote the word fuck up across her left forearm. The next day she went to enter treatment, and they actually turned her away due to the drugs that were still in her system. They didn't have a detox unit. They said, right now you're too great of a risk, but if you can get clean and stay clean for 5 days, then we can try this again. So at that point, Renee took a really brave step, and instead of going back to her dealer's house, she crashed with a friend, a guy named David. Well, David was also in recovery, so he knew what the next 5 days were going to look like. So while she slept, while she rested, he rallied the troops. He called some friends together, and when she woke up, she found that she was in good company. So at that point, when she woke up, she was told, she was reminded that, that she had people that believed in her, people that believed in recovery, and that wherever she was going to go, this wasn't going to be a you thing. This was going to be an us thing. We're going to get there together. So for the next 5 days, those friends, they took turns at sharing each other's stories, learning about each other. They went to basketball games and rock shows to keep her distracted, got her cigarettes and coffee for the coming down, got her plenty of books for the road ahead. And over those days and nights, this idea to write love on her arms came out. The thought was, what she put on her arm, that fuck up, it wasn't a statement of profanity, it was a statement of identity. So to write Love on Our Arms was really trying to speak truth into this, to say, look, Renee, no, you're not your past. Renee, you're not your future. The fact that you're here now, that's enough for us. We're showing up for you right here, right now. So at the end of those 5 days, another friend in that group, a guy named Jamie, he asked Renee, what would you say if your story had an audience? And how would it feel to share your story? And she said, I think if one person could relate to this, then maybe there'd be a purpose for some of the pain in my life. So the next day she checked into
Wow.
treatment, and Jamie sat down and he wrote a 2-page story about what those 5 days looked like. He called it To Write Love on Our Arms for the same reason I told you. He put it on MySpace because it was 2006 and that's what we were all doing. And
Yeah,
he
yeah.
made about 200 shirts, that black shirts with white text that said To Write Love on Our Arms. And the hope was to sell those to help offset her medical costs. And we were fortunate enough to have some friends in touring bands at the time. And they wore the shirt as they traveled. And their fans got curious and they went home and they read the story and they said, Renee sounds an awful lot like my dad. Renee sounds a whole lot like me. Renee sounds like friends and family. Could hope and help be options for us as well? So we really grew as a response to your response to a story called To Write Love on Our Arms. And again, for the past 18 years, we've made it our job to connect as many people as possible to as many people as possible.
Got it, got it. So 18 years. And when did you start working with the organization? And, oftentimes when I talk to folks that are in such true purpose driven sort of career fields, sometimes there's a story behind that. What experiences or sort of beliefs did you have that kind of drew you to that?
Totally. So I wasn't there on day one. I came along not too long after. So I've been on the team now for 16 years, and it was through social media, through MySpace, through a friend who just said, "Hey, I just read this story. You should read it too." And at that point, I was in college. I was about a semester away from graduating, and had been on my own journey. I was well acquainted with substance abuse. I was well acquainted with depression. Still am. Self injury was a part of my story. Thoughts of suicide as well. And when this story came across my screen, I was really struck by the idea that this is a story happening in real time. I grew up in a culture that was comfortable sharing heavy stories, but only in the rearview mirror, right? Like you had to have plenty of distance between you and your heartache. And when we're sharing our stories, we're talking about, the most polished versions of ourselves, oftentimes abridging the story, right? But this was
Sure.
something that was being shared in a moment. And it was something really bold, right? Like when the story was being told, there was no guarantee of a happy ending. There was no promise that there wouldn't be a relapse 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years later. And I am happy to report that Renee is still alive and well today. And but as this was going on, there was something magical to this idea that you can share your life, you can live your life in the presence of other people, and they won't run from you. And that was something that resonated with me. It was I had, a number of friends in my life that loved me despite the reasons I gave them not to. I realized that For all the choices I was making, I could never convince someone to stay away if they were committed to my story, if they were committed to me as a human. So I was taking my first steps into recovery at this point when the story hit my inbox, and I thought, man, like that would be awesome to do something that matters one day. Actually, during this time, I had a mentor in my life who said, you know, the only difference between fertilizer and shit is purpose, right? They both came from a cow's.
Wow. You're
Yeah, man.
yeah,
Like
no, totally.
they both came from a cow's butt, and what are we going to do with it? Are we going to shovel it away? Are we going to run from it? Or could we allow some growth to happen through it? And I was really committed to that idea. So I moved down to Florida, where the organization is based, right after graduating from college, and my hope was to work there until I ran out of money, and then enter the capitalistic workforce and whatever. But if I'm going to work for all my life, I want to do something that I feel like matters for at least a little bit. And well, joke is on 2008 version of me because I never left. So I've been
That's
on the
great.
team now for 16 years.
That's great. That's great, man. And your role specifically is to, evangelize, let's say, the message, all over the country because the organization it's a national organization. Am I right?
Yeah, totally. So we are a national organization. We have an international reach, but our whole focus is on really getting people connected to local and affordable options for mental health care. Primarily, most people learn about us through a screen, through Facebook, through Twitter, through TikTok, through something that's in your pocket or on your desk. And the reality is, the internet, we've seen the best and worst of it over
Yes.
our
Yeah.
journey. And we are more connected than ever, but it's also led to really severe feelings of being isolated, fear of missing out, fear of being misunderstood, fear of what happens when I'm vulnerable. Like so for us,
You
the
see so
goal is
many images of
always
success, that
right,
you see so
right.
many images of success that like it's impossible not to sort of compare your state in life with that. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
But when we look back to our earliest, moments, this was about humans sharing space together, right? This was about an actual collision of lives. This is what it looks like when someone tells you what they're going through, and you can track with their body language. You can ask for a hug. You can see some tears, and you can cheer them on, in tangible ways. So that's become my role, is meeting people in the places that we naturally come together, whether that's speaking at a school or a community of faith or music festivals. Really has been such a incredible and fertile ground for having these conversations and meeting people in real time. When we think about people coming together at a show, it's easy to believe that everyone is there celebrating that day. And the reality is, everyone's coming with a unique context. We are currently in Kentucky, where we're on the heels of Bourbon and Beyond Festival. Tomorrow, I go to Load In for Louder Than Life Festival. Then I head to Birmingham for Furnace Fest, and then I head to Sacramento for Aftershock. You didn't ask all those questions, so but these are places where we're going to be sharing a field with literally hundreds of thousands of people over the next month, and every single one of them has a unique context that brought them there. For some of them, it's a treat. They've had this circled on their calendar for forever. Maybe it's a bachelorette party. Maybe it's hanging out with the boys just because it's been too long. Maybe it's I had never seen this band and they've gotten me through some serious stuff. So I want to see this happen. And then there's other people that are there for a retreat. They need a reset. They're trying to remind themselves that there's things in life worth singing about, things in life worth dancing about, we're screaming about, and certainly we're sharing with other people. And one thing that is never lost on me as we go out into these places is that you showing up changes that space. I mean that metaphysically and just physics, the science of it.
Right.
You being there, you taking up that space means that the sound is bouncing off your body in a way that sounds different if you weren't there. Like, and then that's all of life, man. Like, you being present, even if you don't have the right words about mental health and suicide prevention, you giving this conversation space is making this world less lonely, making it more hopeful. I don't care if this episode reaches 500,000 people or a handful, right? What matters is that we're sharing a human moment.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, we'll let more questions
Dude,
unfold
no,
before
no, man,
I.
you keep going, man. Like I'm just gonna let you go. No, but no, I thank you so much for that. That's awesome. And yeah, you know, the truth is I don't have direct personal experience with this topic, right? But my wife, who I met about 8 years ago, the old-fashioned way, we met at a bar on a Sunday night, and we had a conversation that lasted 45 minutes, and um, told each other our entire life stories. And
Mm.
she told me, that her ex husband died of suicide, and I was like, oh wow, okay. And I felt so taken aback with even my response. Like, what do I even say? And
Mm.
I remember Googling, like, how do you date somebody who has lost someone to suicide? And a couple of, articles there on that. And just so many topics came up, and she just taught me how complex and nuanced this topic is. And it just really shocked me, as I've continued to do a little bit of research on it, just the volume of numbers. Like at your website, I mean, so easy. Like we lose a loved one every 4 seconds. In 2021,
For
12,
40.
40,
Uh,
40 seconds.
yeah.
Yeah. I, and then I was reading that, and some of this is just absolutely shocking to me. And crazy how it's just not top of mind. And like in 12.3 American adults seriously thought about suicide, 3.5 million planned a suicide attempt, 1.7 attempted suicide. I can't believe it's the second leading cause of death for people 10 to 14 and 20 to 34. I mean, that's 48,000, deaths in just 2021. And what blew my mind is I realized that there's certain demographics, certain groups that are perhaps more affected by this. And I certainly assumed the LGBTQ community would be, but
Yeah.
26.3% of LGBTQ youth attempted suicide in 21. That's literally 5 times the rate of heterosexual youth, which is just mind blown when I
Yeah.
read those stats. From a overall trajectory standpoint, are we getting better? I want to hope that it's getting better because mental health, I guess, is more present. My own kids speak about mental health, and access to it. But are we getting better?
I don't think so. The numbers, just anecdotally, are going in the wrong direction. When I first started my mental health journey, there still is a great organization out there called the Jed Foundation, and they put out a PSA that said that half of all college age individuals have felt so depressed at some point that they couldn't function. We know that untreated depression is the leading cause of suicide, and we also know that in the years since the pandemic, that college age individuals have reported a 25% increase of feeling depression and anxiety. So all of a sudden, that half of us is turning into half plus a quarter of us, right? Like, it's those numbers are going in the wrong direction. When I first started working for To Write Love on Our Arms back in 2008, we were reporting that young people age 14 to 18, that suicide represented the third leading cause of death. It's now the second leading cause of death. We know that globally, suicides account for 1 out of every 100 deaths. Like
Wow.
this is while suicide is a overall rare occurrence, you would be hard pressed to find any community that has not been affected by that, right? We are, yeah. So are we getting better? I think we're getting better at, in some ways, of talking about mental health. I think Gen Z is doing a really good job of bringing these conversations to the forefront. However, if we're just reporting on our feelings and we're not acting on or equipping ourselves, our communities, if we aren't pressing our government to put dollars towards mental health access, then we're really not closing that gap. We're just getting more comfortable talking about it. Now, there is value in feeling less alone. When I was struggling with self injury, I was convinced that I was the only one, right? And maybe there would have been a benefit knowing that I wasn't alone in that. When I was
Hmm.
struggling with suicide, it was really that shame that kept me from talking about it. That I knew I was hurting, and in some ways, it's like, man, but if I reach out for help, like, what's gonna happen? Are they gonna kick me out of school, or are they gonna make me stop being an RA? Will I lose my job? Um, and then as I gained some distance from those suicidal moments, I realized, well, I guess a prerequisite to being out of a job or out of school is also being alive. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm no longer here, then I'm also no longer an RA. I'm also no longer in school. But then the story is over. But I think with all of these things, and specifically with suicide, we're talking about challenges that thrive in isolation, really thrive in silence, and societally, we've kind of buttressed that. A lot of us, me specifically, Victor, is probably for you as well. The first time you heard someone talk about suicide, it probably was not from a mental health professional. It was probably through something in pop media, TV, a song,
Yeah.
maybe a joke, maybe whispers in your community of someone that lost a parent or a sibling or a loved one. These conversations weren't held um, in venues where there was opportunity for conversation. And that really just enhanced this idea of stigma. Stigma is whenever silence is the loudest voice in the conversation. It's stigma that allows our assumptions about something to become our absolute truths about it. We have been given a lot of bad ideas about what suicidal thinking is, about what a mental health challenge is. And every time one of these topics comes up without someone challenging a bad idea, stigma wins and we become less safe. I was on a panel several years back, and someone asked me. It was a panel on suicide prevention, and they asked me, "What is suicide?" And I know that they weren't asking just for Webster's dictionary. They were really asking, like, why is suicide, right? And what I kind of arrived at was suicide is the fatal result of a restricted perspective. That suicidal thinking doesn't happen in a bubble. There are a number of conflicts and confusions and contexts that get us to this point. It's not binary. It's not a light switch. I'm fine one day, next day I'm thinking of an early exit. But it happens on increasing inclines of suicidal risk that are driven by legitimate pain, right? So when we are encountering this pain, and when we don't have, when we lose the ability to have people correct our perspective, to remind us of true things along the way, when it's only our depression that's driving our narrative, when it's only our substance abuse that's driving the narrative, when it's only our isolation driving the narrative, I know for me, I can become a very unreliable narrator of my own story. I needed people to to correct me. I needed people to remind me of true things. I needed people to say, man, I hear what you're saying, but I think you got the story wrong. Can I tell it to you from my point of view? And can we see with more eyes on this what's going on? Um, yeah. So are we getting
And
better? I don't know. I think the numbers point in one direction. I'm hopeful that we can move the needle back to a more safe place. But hope itself is not a strategy. But hope makes for incredible fuel in this machinery to keep people safe.
for sure, man. I'm so glad you touched upon that word stigma because, like, in I guess the community that I sort of grew up in, reside in, like mental health is not discussed. It's kind of like being Latino, I guess. Part of the immigrant story. It's like you don't have time to be depressed. You who do you think you are that your feelings matter this much? No, you got to get up and go to work and you know, and my family has evolved so much in this. It's just been really impressive as we've learned. But it's like when years and years ago, I remember talking about mental health, or we would be around the kitchen table, and oh, everybody's depressed apparently, or this and that. And what are you going to go to a therapist for? What are they going to tell you? Like legit, just like complete. Like what are they going to tell you? They don't know your life. Get out of here. And or it's like, and why are you going to go out there and tell your family business? And it's just shocking to me when I think about how many times perhaps somebody around that table was hearing that and maybe didn't speak up or didn't, ask for help. And so, yeah, it's, I love the way you said that, about silences and it's like a petri dish, right? That silence is a petri dish for this to continue to grow and grow. And especially when, we have so many tools to communicate with each other, yet we're just not. And, and honestly, one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you is like, this whole month, I'll be honest, I haven't heard a whole lot about suicide prevention. Maybe it's also we're in such a weird time, and maybe it's just the way my my own social media feeds work. By my own causation, because I'm so into politics. Like all I get is political stuff, right?
Yeah.
And this is so much more important. You know, um, you touched upon mental health and access to mental health, but talk to me a little bit about the addiction portion because I've always associated most of the suicides occurring because of, let's say, depression, um, but I haven't really heard a lot about its tie to addiction.
Yeah, yeah. So, suicide prevention advocates will tell you that one of the first steps in helping someone through a suicidal crisis is maintaining sobriety. That when there are staggering numbers, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but the number of suicides that are attempted and completed while there is a substance in one's body is staggering. It's not insignificant. That kind of points to this idea that um, if there's anything in our body that is changing the way that we perceive reality, or anything that is affecting our inhibitions. One of the most practical and even political steps towards suicide prevention within our communities is what's called impulse management. So years and years ago, after an extended period of politicking around it, San Francisco added a net below the Golden Gate Bridge. Now, originally they didn't want to do that because it didn't look pretty. The reality is, bridges aren't there to be pretty. They're there to connect people from point A to point B, right?
Right,
Like, and
right.
if that is a spot where many people decide to take their last breath, then we need to be aware of ways that we can keep people safe. And they've seen that since adding these protective measures, suicides have gone down. So I'm getting away from from the original point, you're talking about the substances. So this ties back into, if you can frustrate someone's plan to die by suicide by removing access to act on an impulse, that's keeping firearms away, that is finding ways to prevent people from stockpiling medications, that is any number of ways that can upend someone's plan. Generally, there's not a backup plan. Generally, if someone has gotten to that
Really?
point of taking a step towards ending their life, if that has been interrupted, or there's been an intervention, or there's been anything to knock them off of that plan, honestly, Victor, any positive action in someone's life while they're in crisis can go on to save that life. There's a yeah. So I want I'm so sorry. I keep dovetailing, but yeah. So as substances are introduced into our system, that is enabling us to act less rationally on an impulse. So when we're talking about deaths by suicide, we also need to be aware that there are a number of ways that people have gone on to die by suicide. And it's not always an act of explicit violence, but sometimes it is an overdose situation. Sometimes that's completely unintentional, and that makes the numbers difficult as well to gauge. What is an accidental overdose, and what is effectively a self poisoning. But there have been a lot of studies out there that have grouped these deaths together, to call them deaths by despair. That when someone is in the throes of addiction, when someone is in the midst of a suicidal crisis, what we're talking about is a human that feels disconnected from community, someone that doesn't feel like they can exist here anymore. When we talk about suicide, we're also, so often the suicide prevention conversation focuses just on the act of suicide, and that's unfair in so many ways, because again,
Hmm.
suicide doesn't happen in a bubble. There are things that got us to this point, and it's man, totally lost my train of thought there.
Well, no, no, no. Actually,
Yeah, well,
you inspired a question, because the process, right? It's not just that act. And it reminded me to one of the posts that I saw on the social media feed, about checking on your strong friends, checking on this, because
yeah,
it's, so many times when you hear about someone dying by suicide, the rare occasion that you actually hear that that's how they died. Um, I've heard before. I was blindsided. Like, we were all blindsided, and
yeah.
immediately I go to judgmental phase, and I'm like, well, you're their family. How did you not see this? That's ridiculous,
Mm.
and obviously a very stupid assumption, for me to even come into my head. But very, are there's got to be very specific signs, obvious signs that you should be on the lookout for. What are some of the ones that maybe don't, you would say are not so obvious that you kind of need to be on the lookout for?
Yeah, yeah. I did refine that train that I was chasing there a second ago. But we'll definitely talk about the signs and clues
Yep.
that point to elevated suicide risk. But I think so often when, to back up just a little bit, when we talk about suicide, we're so often focusing on the moment where we fool ourselves into believing that suicide is the problem, when to the suicidal mind, suicide is actually the solution to a
Solution.
perceived insoluble problem. And not only are people feeling hopeless, they're also feeling helpless, right? Like, if they could have solved what is getting them down by now, then they would have. And that's where community needs to come in. That's the other kind of a big problem with identifying suicide as just the moment, if we're only focusing on it as a personal tragedy and not as a public health challenge, then we're missing the boat completely. That's where Suicide Prevention Month really comes into play. This has to be
Hmm.
more this month than just saying, hey, you, person that's feeling down, person that doesn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, person that is looking forward to the day where you don't wake up anymore. You can do it. You can get through this. I believe in you. We're stopping
Yeah.
well short, Victor. It needs to be, we can get through this. What's going on? What's getting you down? How can I help, solve what's going on with you? What resources have you reached out to? Because I can research some more. So often it's almost like, think about someone in your life that's struggled with a chronic illness, or maybe even something scary like cancer. If someone comes to you and says, Victor, I have cancer, I need help, you're probably not going to say, well, have you thought about not having cancer? Like,
Yeah.
have you given
Right.
that a try?
Yeah.
No, you're gonna say something like, "Oh man, have you found a doctor yet?" Because actually, my uncle had a similar cancer, and he loved his medical team. Let me make a call and see if they have an opportunity to meet with you. Hey, when are your chemo appointments? I'll drive you there because I know you can feel so crummy on the way back. I got you on that. Hey, when's Johnny's soccer practice? Hey, I'll do the carpool today. I got you. Oh man, I know the bills are piling up. I just happen to find this extra $50 bill lying around. Go take yourself out. Get some good food. Pay that backlogged phone bill. Like, these are ways that we help. You're not a doctor. You are not undoing someone's cancer, but you are being there for support. Mental health
Hmm.
and suicide prevention has to be the same way. So, we know as a society, it's way easier to say, hey, Victor, I have cancer, than saying, hey, Victor, I have been depressed for longer than I can remember ever being happy, and I just don't think I belong on this planet anymore. I just want out. That is not attention seeking behavior, because attention seeking behavior doesn't exist. But that is saying, I have reached the end of my ability to figure out how to solve this. I need help figuring out what comes next. So there's a number of different clues that exist, and clues can be given to a wide number of people in anyone's social network. It could be given to just a handful of people. Sometimes these aren't communicated verbally at all. They may be discoverable, tangible behaviors, or notes, or you name it. But we do know that the vast majority of people who go on to die by suicide have communicated their desire to die in the weeks preceding their attempt. Um, Not every time is it going to sound like, "Hey, if I don't get this job, I'm going to kill myself."
Hmm.
Sometimes it's being aware of someone's context. Did this person just lose a job or get kicked out of school? Are they facing an unwanted move? Um, is this person updating their will with no real reason that I could figure out? Did they
Hmm.
just buy their partner a brand new car? Where's that coming from? That's not a birthday. That's did they really just give away grandma's ring to my cousin? Like, that's weird. I thought we were gonna divvy up, that in next time we got together. Like, why is this happening? So it could sound like, someone that has never talked about spirituality or the afterlife in their life, and now that seems to be all
Right.
they're thinking about. That could, so the signs are varied, but I think the best way that we can go about to identify someone's elevated suicide risk is to be there with them consistently, to figure out what a baseline looks like. And whenever we see a deviation from that baseline, that's a good time to ask follow up questions. Uh, it's, yeah,
And that's my
we man
follow up
we
question.
Yep. Yeah.
How, if I see one of those, how do I go about it in a manner that, you know, and I guess it's obviously a case by case scenario, but some idea on how do you approach that? Because you also don't want to be straight up offensive necessarily, and just like, are you thinking about suicide? Or at least that goes through my head.
You just did it. No, Victor, that's it. That's
But
it. That is
that
the
plain.
question. Because here's the thing. You cannot, this is a big myth out there, but you
Mhm.
cannot put the thought of suicide into someone's head. They are either thinking about it or they're not, right? So all we're doing by asking, hey man, where are you? Have you been unhappy lately? Hey, how unhappy? Have you been so very unhappy that you're thinking about killing yourself? Like, this matters to me. You matter to me. And there could be a time where you ask that question and they brush it off. Oh no, man, you got that all wrong. Say, all right, cool. I love you. Well, we'll circle back on this. Ask them again. You can be persistent without being rude, uh, but at the end of the day, asking that question, are you thinking about suicide? What that does
Mhm.
is actually lowers the temperature in the room. It may not feel like it in the moment because at that point your amygdala is firing. You've identified a dangerous situation, and so you're like going into fight or flight mode. But what is actually happening is you are proving to that person that you are ready to go there if the conversation leads there. Uh, you just saying, "Hey, are you thinking of killing yourself?" and just letting that be a full sentence is a life saving conversation. Now, a poor way to ask that question is, hey, Victor,
Mhm.
you're not thinking of killing yourself, are you? Or, hey, man, suicide's stupid. Surely you're not thinking about that, right? What that's doing is it's helping me save face. It's helping me feel more comfortable. But I'm telling you to tell me that the answer is no, regardless of what you're feeling. I'm not allowing you to
Right.
speak freely.
Right.
So as we're asking these questions, we want to make sure that people can respond candidly, that they can respond honestly. And asking that question, even if they say no, I'm not thinking of killing myself, but man, life has been so heavy. That's still a place that we can continue to serve, because suicide, doing suicide prevention, if we all as a community, if we all as a society are taking the steps to get better at suicide prevention conversationally, we're not only going to see suicide rates drop, we're going to see all of mental health challenges be addressed more competently. You can apply suicide prevention conversation to anyone having a tough day. Uh,
Mhm.
and if the conversation doesn't escalate to that point, what harm have you done? None. What you've
Right.
done is close the gap between us, and you've proven that if I ever do have that inkling that maybe I'm not long for this world anymore, that Victor was really compassionate last time I talked to him. Victor didn't I didn't feel like a monster in front of Victor, and that means a lot. Maybe I can give him a call, you know. And the
Yeah.
reality
Yeah.
is, as long as these conversations are happening, as long as we're still talking, that means I am not enacting a suicide plan, right? So
Got it.
the
Right.
if we're
Exactly.
still in front of each other talking, every second we
Yeah.
buy is another second for that crisis to be addressed and to de-escalate.
Got it. Man, you just reminded me, yeah, I totally get it. Ask the question directly. But it actually reminded me to a time with a buddy of mine. And, dudes just typically don't talk a whole lot. When I'll ask you, hey, how you doing? Good, good. I remember once asking this friend, I just saying, so, like, how are you doing? But, like, how are you doing? And he paused and he said, well, shit, I actually don't know. No one's ever asked, you know,
Hmm.
like I don't know. And I'm like, man, so to think that even to close friends, I've not sat there and asked them how they really are. Um, I can see why you have to break through that and just be, look, I'm seeing something. Are you thinking about committing suicide? Has to be because I guess you can't really be beating around the bush either for too long on it or second guessing yourself. To your point.
Yeah, totally. I think that there's ways, especially. I mean, you kind of hinted at this. For most males out there, especially in the states, our emotional vocabulary is so limited. We haven't done the work to really press on what feelings are coming from where. And so like, yeah, I've been really happy lately. Okay, what kind of happy are you? Are you excited? Is there something you're anticipating? Uh, are you Yeah, I mean, I'm exhibiting, that lack of mental health vocabulary right now. Like, but asking those questions. Hey, yeah, I'm feeling kind of sad. Oh, what kind of sad? Like, where is that sadness living? Is that, in your head? Is it in your heart? Are you worried about something? Have you
Yeah.
had an outlet for that? Or could you be depressed? Like, are you just burnt out? Like, uh, but asking those follow-up questions, I love that. Like, how are you, and then how are you really? Those, yeah, just those two questions can do so much in, and again, closing the gap between us. We all
Yeah.
are walking through life, either feeling like we have to protect ourselves from something, sometimes even protecting other people from ourselves. I know that was something I felt deeply in the darkest parts of my depression journey, and when I was feeling suicidal. I was convinced that if anyone got too close to me, that I would be doing them damage as well. So I was trying to protect people from Chad. And
Hmm.
and again, I had to have friends correct my perspective and say, we were never scared of you, and we weren't scared of your pain either. We just wanted to help. At the end of the day, like, you or burdens are things that you have. They aren't things that you are. Uh, but
Got
even
it.
if you are convinced that you are a burden, there are people that would drop everything to carry you.
Yeah, like I've heard that burden thing before. It's like they're considering it because they feel they're a burden to everyone else around them, which is it's amazing. Uh, Talk to me a little bit about, and this is more a little bit from my personal perspective. Like I was telling you that story about my wife earlier. It, Victims of suicide aren't simply the person that dies by suicide, but clearly
Yes.
it is everyone around them. And so it's like when I hear victims of suicide, I mean, it's how, given the numbers we were talking about earlier, how many of us aren't, some sort of victim of suicide. And I know that that grief is likely different, right?
Hmm.
Talk to me about that. And sure, it varies, but how how one deals with grief when it's coming from suicide.
It's unique. In many ways, it takes one to know one, and how to navigate grief through suicide loss. Fortunately,
Oh, and I'm sorry to interrupt you because I
oh
actually
yeah,
learned that those who have lost someone to suicide are far more likely to actually attempt suicide as well. That
that's right.
blew my mind. I had no clue.
Yeah, particularly if it was someone within your family unit. So if it was your father or your mother, your guardian who died by suicide as a child, that is a huge indicator of risk. And
Mm.
spouses as well. And I mean, it's hard. It's heavy, because so often, these people that have experienced suicide loss go on to be advocates, and it's hard to, as you are learning more, to not feel like, man, like, now that I know this, I could have done more. I should have done more. And dear listener, if if that's you, my heart is so wide open for you, and I hope you hear this clearly, that no one is judging you, period, full stop, and no one is is judging you based on what you know now, according to what happened in the past. You can only do what you know how to do when you know how to do it.
Right.
That's it. That's it. As we learn more, we can honor those that have been lost as we continue to learn more and care more. And the research is always evolving, right? There are aspects to suicide research that, like, even just this year, when I was trained in a suicide prevention course, and just in the past 6 months, I've had to update my presentation due to research that's coming out. Like, this is always evolving. So there are a number of networks out there that speak directly to people that have lost loved ones by suicide. Um, my mind instantly goes to AFSP. That stands for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. They are dear
Okay.
friends of ours. They're heroes of ours. They're a national network with regional chapters all over the place. You probably have one very, very close by. So
Hmm.
every chapter hosts a walk, a solidarity walk that's called Out of the Darkness. So if you go to
My wife has done that. Yeah.
afsp.org, yeah, yeah, awesome.
Okay.
That's healing. It's a heavy day, but there's catharsis there. There's realizing that you are not walking through this loss alone. And many of these chapters also host grieving groups, people that lost loved ones last week, last month, last year, last decade, all walking through this together, all sorting this out, all kind of telling you, like, yeah, it's gonna be hard, but we are gonna keep showing up for each other. Um, but it's I mean, thinking about, just people I met as recently as 3 days ago at this music festival, and you don't undo that pain. You don't even I don't even think that loss ever shrinks, um, but we do get to grow around it. Um, that there's nothing you can do to rewrite or undo that sense of loss. Um, and the at times, like, the best you can do is let the silence sit for a bit, let the tears flow. Um, if you have someone in your community that has experienced suicide loss, I would recommend that you don't try to solve it with a pithy phrase. That you don't try to throw a Hallmark card band-aid on a wound that's that deep. Um, I'll go ahead and say it, and maybe you can edit it out. I don't care if you believe that heaven needed another angel, because I still needed my
Oh man.
friend,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So don't don't talk. Just be there. Just be present. Just let this suck. And in time, we'll be hit with a memory that's going to remind us of joy. We're going to remember. Uh, we're going to see winks out there, these little cosmic winks that remind us of our friends, of our family. Um, Joy will come back, but don't don't you push me into the joy pool. All right, like, I need this to be heavy. I need to feel this. And so, when we are interacting with people, don't be a thermometer. Don't be the thermostat. Let the temperature of the room be what it is, and you just read the room, and be there, and support. Support looks like, um, doing your homework ahead of time and knowing what counselors exist in your community, knowing what response teams exist in your community, knowing what peer support groups exist. That's that's also suicide prevention, right? You just mentioned that people that have lost loved ones are radically more at risk for dying by suicide themselves. So if we are interacting with someone that has died by suicide, then we need to be aware of ways that we can support them beyond just ourselves, beyond trying to be a superhero. We need to be a connector. We need to uh, really illuminate pathways towards continued hope, help, and healing.
Yeah, man. You said so much there that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks because I remember my wife telling me, for the rest of our lives, this particular date is going to be a bit heavy. And I asked her, well, what can I do? Like, how can I help you? And she was like, just be there. And she said precisely what you were saying. She's like, because so many times people have attempted to that make say something to make you feel better. And she's like, it's crazy how sometimes that those conversations go really poorly because it's
Yeah.
just be there. And that no that's very meaningful, man. So to me, like, it's very clear, suicide prevention is not about that individual, but seems like very much a community effort is what I'm hearing from you, that we gotta keep talking about it, as uncomfortable as it is, and talking about it really freaking clearly and directly about it. Now, if I'm doing that and I've got a friend and I'm in a situation, me in an attempt to be supportive, where's the first place I go to for information on how to help if I need,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So I'll start by saying, answering that by saying, now is the time to start building out that list of places to go, and it will be a list.
Okay.
It's not just a one size fits all. Um, People are unique, and the ways that we respond to help are going to be varied. What works for Victor may not work great for Chad, but it's worth throwing every good thing at this. So you can start the search by going to our website, TWLOHA.com. There we have a number of resources that are organized by specific mental health challenge, also by key identifiers. We also have a tool on our website that you can find affordable mental health care options by zip code, something as
Okay.
as close as your own neighborhood. But if we believe that someone is in crisis, 988 in the United States is the National Suicide Prevention Helpline.
I only learned about that
That's
number a year ago at most.
Yeah. So
Can't believe I
so
had
don't
no
don't
clue.
feel bad about it. So that's new. That it's a short number,
Oh,
988. It used to be, and you can still access them by dialing 1-800-273-TALK. But that was a big step a couple years back of that becoming just like 911. It's 988. Um, there's also that is, so 988 you can call, you can text, and their website also has a chat option available. For another text option that is great for people experiencing any sort of crisis, any sort of heavy moment, is our friends at Crisis Text Line. That number is 741-741. Start a conversation
okay.
there, and you can see you'll be instantly connected to a trained responder to help you navigate whatever it is you're walking through. Um, you can even do this if you can sit down with someone you love and text 988 or text crisis text line right now and just show them like that you're not afraid to text. And all you have to do when someone responds is just say, hey, I'm just proving to my sister, my nephew, my spouse, my friend that y'all exist. So
Great
just want to
idea.
say hi. Like
Great
just
idea.
you can do that. It's free. You can do that.
Yeah.
You Victor, you were mentioning earlier statistics around our LGBTQIA plus friends and family. Amazing friends at the Trevor Project. That they're there for queer youth mental health, and if you're no longer a youth, they still have some resources for you. You can call, text, or chat there. Our friends in Trans Lifeline do amazing work as well. Their phone line, I don't believe, is 24/7 yet, but they do enormously good work. We know that 1 in 5 transgender and non-binary youth have attempted suicide at some point. So we know that these numbers are staggering. So as we build out our resource toolkit, our Batman utility belt of hope and help, it's good to have diverse options at your disposal, meeting people exactly where they are. Um, so our website will have all of those resources listed as well.
Okay.
But yeah, doing and you know it, doing the research now to build out this in my phone I have a note, it's my oh shit list, so when I encounter something and go oh shit, I know that I don't have to do research in that moment. I can be fully compassionately present instead of having to also navigate, you know, how to
Okay.
logistically
That's
solve
smart.
a problem. So be prepared. Be prepared for conversations to come up. And but yeah, our website is a great hub to start building out that resource list.
Got it. Got it. Chad, I mean, so, dude, we absolutely, the world needs you um, eh, to help with this. I mean, I feel like I've learned so much. I honestly feel far more confident in addressing the issue. How can we actually help you and help the organization sort of further this mission? What's sort of the best way that we can actually help?
Yeah, so Suicide Prevention Month, if you're still listening and it's still September, we still have our campaign going on. We call it our Please Stay Alive campaign. So if you go to TWLOHA.com/stay, you'll find all sorts of ways you can help out by being a fundraiser. We have given us a follow on social media and just reposting some of the infographics that we're putting out there. That does a lot of good. It sounds it sounds too easy. And if it's that easy, why not do it? If you are listening to this and it's no longer September, guess what? That doesn't mean that suicide isn't still a
Yeah.
priority in mental health conversations. So there is never a bad time to talk about this. And if you get to the point you're like, well, I don't know how to talk about it, once again, our website exists to help build out what it looks like to have these conversations. We have some backlog podcasts of our own that you can dive into. We have blogs that you can dive into to just again get a better handle on not just the statistics about these challenges, but also what it looks like for someone to have a lived experience and how they express it, building out how we think about and how we talk about this kind of stuff. Years ago, I thought my role in this nonprofit was just to keep banging the table, saying it's about damn time we talk about this.
Hmm.
Now it's not an issue of talking about the issues, but talking about ways that we can care for one another. So identifying what the problem is isn't the entirety of the conversation, but it turns into what are the ways that we are keeping ourselves, our community, our neighborhood, our family units safer. What are ways that we are helping them feel more seen, more heard, more valued, more legitimate on this planet? So we have that our website exists not just for resources, but also for edifying how we go about thinking and discussing these issues.
Awesome. Chad, seriously, can't thank you enough for the time today. For
And
that, and just want to thank you for the gift of that human experience, for that real conversation, on something that was kind
yeah,
of
man.
been weighing on
Well,
me.
and I want to applaud you too, Victor. Like that's how you started this is so important. Hey, this is something that's piqued my interest, and I don't know a lot about it. Can we talk about this? Curiosity. Have like you don't have to know everything. You're not expected to know everything, and
I
because
know
you're not
so little
expected
about so
to,
little.
it's yeah. It's you can use that curiosity because we're not expected to learn everything. That means you're not gonna get bonus points by convincing me that you know something that you don't, right? So this
Right.
conversation, even though we were bouncing all over the place, that is still a productive mental health and suicide prevention conversation. So, folks out there, emulate this. Find someone in your community and just ask questions. You don't need to find all the answers. Sometimes you're just going to find better questions, and that's worth it. That is worth your time and worth the energy.
Chad, thank you so much.
Oh, buddy, you're great. Let's chat again sometime, huh?
We absolutely will. I promise we're definitely going to do that for sure.
I love that. Love
All
that.
right. Take care, man.
All right, be good.